Hare Krishna. So today morning we are discussing from the Madhurya Kadambini, mapping our inner territory. So the Madhurya Kadambini is basically a book by Srila Vishwanath Thakur, which is based on a book by, can you go to the next slide please? So I'll explain what the map of the inner territory means and how it is described. So how we navigate in our inner journey, that is briefly described by Sutta Goswami in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the second chapter, which is entitled by Srila Prabhupada as Divinity and Divine Service. So in that, the verses from 6 to 22 comprise the concise description of Bhagavad Dharma. And within that, 16 to 20, they describe the transformation of the heart that happens when we practice bhakti. So, actually this section is the most quoted section from the Bhagavatam by our acharyas. And Prabhupada often quotes, in fact, when Prabhupada wrote the song Markine Bhagavad Dharma, that song is in Bengali, but within that he quotes verses from this section, these verses, because they depict the process by which bhakti transforms our hearts. Now that has been taken by Srila Rupa Goswami, and he has elaborated that in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, specifically in 2 verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. What is described in those 4 or 5 verses, he analyzes into further stages. And what Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu describes as 9 stages, we will discuss them now. Within that, one stage is further elaborated by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, of how we basically move forward in bhakti. In the Bhagavatam class, many times we sing this verse. Bhaktir bhavati naishtiki Narayana maskutya namchaiva navattam devim saraswatim vyatam tato jaya mudirayet nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamalo shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So naishtiki bhakti. Prabhupada translated that as bhakti becomes an irrevocable fact in the heart. So naishtiki means unshakable, unbreakable. It becomes, so that level of bhakti, how one can attain, that is what is analyzed in these stages. So next slide. Here we have the 9 stages which have been described by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So the first stage is Shraddha. So these are 9 stages which move onward. Shraddha means we have initial faith that there is something more in life. That, okay, the life that I am living, I am earning money, I am pursuing sense pleasure, I am achieving a position and power, all this is okay, but there must be something more in my life. So Srila Prabhupada explains the Shraddha as favorable spiritual curiosity. That means, is there something spiritual? Is there something more to life? And everyone in the world at some time or the other gets this question. Either it may come because of seeing the sudden destructiveness and perishability of material things, or it may come because of we achieve our dreams and then we feel it. This doesn't really satisfy me. Is there something more in my life? There should be something more. So that, if that starts off, that Shraddha, we start inquiring, and that brings us to Sadhu Sangha, the association of devotees. Now when we come in the association of devotees, that is basically spiritually minded people, where we start inquiring, okay, what is this spiritual stuff? It's like we may come for some program, or we may get some books, and then we may come to a temple. So this Sadhu Sangha is where the Shraddha is further developed. Now these 9 stages are not discrete stages, in the sense that it is not that the previous stage ends and the next stage begins. They are like steps in a ladder. Now if you consider the step, there is one step, the next step. The second step is built on the first step. The third step is built on the second step. So that means, it is not that when we start developing Sadhu Sangha, then Shraddha gets over. No, Shraddha becomes stronger. When we start practicing Bhajan Kriya, the third stage, it is not that we stop doing Sadhu Sangha. No, Sadhu Sangha also goes on. The future stages are built on the previous stages. So the stages are overlapping and rising. Now, in the sadhu sangha, when we come and associate with devotees, there we come to know that, yes, there is a higher side to life, higher spiritual side, and there is a process by which we can experience it. And that process is bhajana kriya, where we start practicing bhakti. Devotion is not just a feeling. That's what our Acharya told. Devotion is actually a doing. That's why Prabhupada translated bhakti not just as devotion, he translated as devotional service. So devotion is a doing. That doing, anushilanam. That is what we do in bhajana kriya. We chant, we do deity worship, we do various kinds of services. And by this, when we start doing this, then we come to the fourth stage, that is Anartha Nivrtti. So going further, love is not just a feeling, it's a doing. And in that doing, love is also a choosing. Choosing. If in this relationship also, if a man and woman say that they're in love with each other, then if the woman sees that this man is also flirting with so many other men, then she'll say, you're not really loving me. So love is not just a doing. It's firstly not just a feeling, it is a doing. And that doing involves choosing. So there are anarthas in our heart which we have to refuse to choose when we choose Krishna. So anartha nivritti means that those things which take us away from Krishna, we refuse them. And then when we do that, from anartha nivritti comes nishtha. So shraddha and nishtha are both faith. But shraddha is more of a favorable curiosity. Whereas nishtha is realized conviction. It is realized conviction. So for example, if say, I have been having a cough for a long time, and I've tried many doctors, but it's nothing has worked for me. So then I hear from somebody that there's a very good doctor, and he cures. So then I might just have favorable curiosity. Let me go and check it out. But after I follow the prescription, and then I am cured, then there is no doubt left in me. This is a good doctor. This medicine works. So if we ourselves are cured, then it's not just a curiosity, it's a realized conviction for us. So when we come to the level of nishtha, that means we have seen the process of bhakti work in our life. We have seen our heart getting transformed. We have seen our anarthas going down. We have seen our attraction to Krishna increasing. And at that time, this faith becomes very strong. So the Acharyas give the example that initially at the stage of Shraddha, the faith is like a banana tree. It can just be shaken. But at the stage of Nishtha, the faith is like a banyan tree with deep roots. It can't be shaken. So Nishtha is strong faith which comes by the practice of Anartha Nivritti. By the practice that leads to Anartha Nivritti. And then after that are advanced stages. So Nishtha means we have convinced this process works. But after that comes Ruchi. It's a wonderful thing of the bhakti is that normally when we are sick, now say if you are sick, we are given you take this diet and you take these medicines. So usually we don't like the diet, we don't like the medicine also. But we follow it. So initially in the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti or Sadhana Bhakti, where we do things because they make sense to us. We know that I should be doing this because this will be good for me. But we don't like it. So our idea normally when we follow a diet or when we take a medicine is that, okay, after I am cured, then I'll take a real feast. I will eat a feast. But bhakti is such that which is our diet and medicine, that itself transforms into a feast. So what do we think? I have to do this as a regulation, as a discipline. That itself transforms into something very relishable. So that is the stage of ruchi. In the previous stages also, we have some attraction, some taste, but at the stage of ruchi, it becomes a very strong, intense taste in bhakti. Now, from ruchi comes asakti. Now, the primary difference between ruchi and asakti is in both there is higher spiritual experience. But in ruchi, the focus is on the process. Like I like to dance in kirtans. I just like the exuberance, the energy of dancing and singing, and I like the holy name. But in asakti, it is not just the process, but the person to whom we are offering the process. That becomes the focus. We are not just singing and dancing, we are remembering Krishna while singing and dancing. So, that asakti means the ruchi is taste in the process of bhakti. Asakti is attachment to the object of bhakti, that is Krishna. So in that sense, it's a step forward. And then there is bhava. Bhava means spiritual emotion. So we all experience some spiritual emotion occasionally now, but at the stage of bhava, there is steady and strong spiritual emotion that is experienced. So whenever we perceive Krishna stimuli, and we get strong spiritual emotions at that time. And after that is Prema. So bhava is like the rising sun, Prema is like the risen sun. So they are just progressive stages where at the stage of Prema there is constant and total attraction to Krishna. When one is filled with love for Krishna. And this so from Shraddha to Prem is an inner journey, and it's a journey of our consciousness. Modern science is primarily experimental. We take an object outside and we subject it to an experiment. Okay, put this chemical, put this, change the temperature, increase the pressure or whatever, and we see what changes happen. Bhakti is also a science, but this is a science in which we are not the subject of the experiment, we are not the performer of the experiment, but we are also the object of the experiment. That means we are performing the experiment on ourselves. And in that sense, bhakti is the experiment that involves experience. So modern science is experimental science, bhakti is an experiential science. Experience we have. And this is a science because it is a traceable, repeatable process. It is not just that, you feel good when you chant Hare Krishna. Yes, that is good if you feel good while chanting Hare Krishna. But as we keep practicing, there will be a systematic inner transformation that will happen. And this itself, we can elaborate and have a separate class. But this is how many of you have had heard about these 9 stages before? Okay. How many of you have heard of systematic classes on these 9 stages? Okay, little few. Okay, fine. So I will not go in these 9 stages right now. It's just a brief introduction. What Rupa Goswami does is, he expands, not Rupa Goswami, Vishwanath Thakur, the 4th stage in this is Anartha Nivrtti. How we give up the things that misdirect us in bhakti. He takes that and he analyzes that into 6 stages. And that is what we will be focusing on. So if time permits, we can discuss this also later. But so the 6 stages in Anartha Nivrtti, this is what comes in Madhurya Kadambini. In the Madhurya Kadambini is basically like a cloud bank of nectar. So if you are in a forest or if you're in a desert and we are parched, then if rain falls, it's very comforting. But it's not rain, imagine if nectar falls. It's so much more delightful. He said there are different clouds of nectar that come in. So in the second cloud burst, in the 7th verse, he talks about these 6 stages. So the 6 stages are utsaha, ghanatarla, vyudha vikalpa, visaya-sangara, niyamakshama, and tarangini. So this term is Sanskrit, but the concepts are very, very relatable. So what is utsaha? Utsaha is basically the zeal and the pride of a new convert. Whenever we start something new, then, I'm doing something new. Just see. So probably a relatable example could be nowadays there is so much beauty is equated with a slim figure. And everybody is conscious, I want to lose my weight. So suppose we find some new weight loss regimen and we start practicing it. Then what happens? We are practicing it and we are constantly checking the weight. Is my weight losing? And then after we are losing the weight, we want everyone to notice that the weight is lost. And then what happens at that time? Primarily, the focus is not whether I am really changing my eating habits, whether I am actually eating healthy to sustain a less weight. It is primarily on just losing weight and showing everyone that I have lost weight. So like that, in the first stage of bhakti, there is enthusiasm. Yes, I have found a new path now. And I have found a new path. And because I have found a new path, then I am very excited. And I want to show everyone, I am changed now. I am a different person. I am a devotee. This. So there is a pride, there is a zeal. But that zeal is not for substantial inner transformation. It is more for showing others that I have transformed. And with that, we focus very much on wanting to convince and convert others. And just as if we are following some diet, there are of course ways to lose weight in a healthy way, but there are some diets where people regulate their diet in a very unrealistic way for maybe a few days, and they lose a lot of weight, and afterwards they gain all that weight and they gain more also. So it's initially when they lost weight, they feel, I lost weight. And then at that time, if temporarily they follow a very strict diet. And at that time, when they're following that very strict diet, they are also very judgmental of others. You're eating so much. So, like that, in the initial stages of bhakti, we have doubts. But once those doubts are over and we started practicing bhakti, at that time we become very judgmental of others. Hey, you're doing this, you're eating meat, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that. You're so fallen. And that judgmentality is because we are, at that time, utsaha mai. So, utsaha means full of, utsaha means enthusiasm. Now, enthusiasm is a very good thing. But the enthusiasm should be for inner transformation. It is not just for outer ostentation. Ostentation means display. When the enthusiasm is primarily for outer ostentation, see, I am doing this, I am doing that, I am doing that. Then, sometimes we may fast on Ekadashi, a fast Nirjal. And when we are fasting Nirjal, we are so proud I am fasting Nirjal, that when we go around and see who all is eating what. And then, hey, you are eating so much, you are eating so much. So our body is fasting, but our ego is feasting. So that sort of practice is utsahamai, where our focus is very much on show of what we are doing. And because of that, we start thinking that I am the best. Jesus said that if you give charity with one hand, don't let the other hand come to know that you're giving charity. He says if you're fasting, he says dress yourself in such a way that nobody comes to know that you're fasting. He says, just be enthusiastic. So the idea is there's no need to show off what we are doing. So at this stage, because we are so judgmental, so everything, my path is the right path. So everyone else, it's wrong. Similarly, this can happen within the bhakti community also. My temple is the best temple. My guru is the best guru. My counselor, my mentor is the best mentor. So basically, bhakti at this stage, bhakti is ultimately meant to bring about the destruction of our false ego. But at this stage, bhakti is simply an extension of our false ego. Bhakti becomes an extension of our false ego. So, yes, my guru is the greatest guru. Why? Because I am great. So I am great, therefore my guru must be great. So it's basically whatever we do in material life, in material life also sometimes people do something different. And they want everyone to know that I'm doing something different. So that way, spiritual life, we also do something different, and we want everyone to know that I'm doing something different. So at this stage, the utsaha, the enthusiasm is there. But the enthusiasm is primarily for external reasons. One may practice also very strictly, but one is practicing primarily because one wants everyone else to know how well I am practicing. So I may sit erect and chant all my rounds. And I'm sitting erect, I am sitting erect, but I am looking who is sleeping, who is distracted. And in all this process, actually, I completely forget that I am not attentive. We don't miss anything while chanting except Krishna. Everything else, we're judging everyone else at that time. Hey, you are not pronouncing the mantra properly. Hey, you are sleeping and chanting. Why are you so restless? So what happens? We follow strictly, but we judge others too much. And because of that, two things happen. One is we ourselves don't advance much because our focus is not on Krishna. And second is we alienate others. We alienate others. And this can especially happen with respect to our relatives, our friends. When we are associating with them, then they are not yet convinced and they may be practicing something else. If we come up as very judgmental. For example, now, if we are worshipping Krishna and say we come from a family or from a social circle where demigod worship is being practiced. So we say demigod worshippers, alpamedhasaha, less intelligent. Now, actually, this is not just insensitive, it is incorrect. Why? Because that is only one part of the story. Krishna does say, but Krishna speaks from different perspectives. And if we see, this was, Alpamedasa comes in the 7th chapter, but in the 17th chapter, Krishna talks about Shraddha-traya vibhaga, faith in the 3 modes. And there he says, Yajante satvika devan yaksha rakshamsi rajasan pretam bhutaganam shanye yajante tamasahajana. He says, those who are in goodness, they worship the devatas. Yajante satvika devan. And those who are in passion, yaksha rakshamsi rajasam. That those who are in passion, they worship the yakshas and the rakshasas. And pretam bhutaganam shanye. Yesterday we discussed about black magic. So worshipping spirits and things like that, that is in tamoguna. So the important point for us is, Krishna is saying that worship of devatas is in the mode of goodness. Now, we may also have heard about how people in goodness worship Vishnu, people in passion worship Brahma, people in ignorance worship Shiva. Now, that is true at one level, but the point is that there are levels in this. To worship any higher being, that requires some platform of goodness. Without some basic goodness, one will not follow scripture, or at least follow scripture partially and worship some devata. So following demigods or worshipping demigods is actually a sign of goodness. We should not think that, oh, somebody is worshipping Shiva, that they are in the lower modes or anything like that. They may themselves be very devoted to Shiva and they may following the rules of Shiva worship very diligently. So it's like, within goodness, we can have further levels. Within goodness, so if we consider goodness to be one, goodness, passion, ignorance. See, goodness is not just one color. In goodness also, just like we may say there is a blue color. Now within blue color also there is sky blue, there is dark blue. There can be so many shades of blue. So like that, within goodness itself there can be many shades. But there is worship of devatas, basically it is in the mode of goodness. But within that, we could say worship of Vishnu is goodness. Whereas worship of Brahma is passion goodness. Worship of Shiva is ignorance goodness. But still there is a platform of goodness. Or just to give another example for illustrating this. Now it is, Prabhupada explains sometimes that, say, that the animals are also in the 3 modes. That, say, cow is in goodness. Say, monkeys are in, say, lion and tiger are in passion. And say monkeys and donkeys, they are in ignorance. Now this is true, but from another perspective, all animals are in the mode of ignorance. So the animal body itself in the mode of ignorance. But within ignorance also we can have layers. So say a cow is in goodness ignorance. A lion or tiger are in passion ignorance. Whereas a monkey or a donkey, it is in ignorance. So similarly, worship of devatas is in goodness. They're following Shastra, at least to some level, and they're worshipping devatas. So we should not come off a judgmental condemning. So this judgmentality, yes, Krishna is supreme. Anyone else is being worshipped, less intelligent. Yes, they are less intelligent from the transcendental perspective ultimately, in the sense that they are not seeking an eternal goal, or they're not understanding the eternal goal. But the fact that they're worshipping some higher being, that itself requires some intelligence. Sometimes we may, at the stage of utsaha, we do an excellent job in alienating those whom we are meant to attract. So we actually often work quite counterproductively. Then after this utsaha stage, we come to the next stage, ghana tarla. Ghana tarla means there is intensity and laxity in bhakti. That sometimes we feel, let me practice bhakti very, very seriously. I'll practice bhakti so seriously that today I will chant 64 rounds and by the end I'll be seeing Krishna right in front of me. And the next day I think, 16 rounds is also too much, Maybe I should not be fanatical. 1 round is good enough. So our enthusiasm, that where initially the enthusiasm was primarily driven by external considerations, now when we understand that actually that external consideration not all that important, I have to achieve some internal goal. Then at that time, sometimes we feel I'm going to achieve the internal goal immediately, so there is a lot of enthusiasm. There is intensity in bhakti. But afterwards when you feel the internal goal is very far away, then there is laxity. Oh, what is this? It's too far away. So that we keep going between intensity and laxity. And sometimes when we start studying scripture, we start studying 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, very diligently. And after we study for 1 week, and after 1 month, we don't open scripture only. So basically, there are phases of very intense practice, and after that, there are phases of almost no practice or very little practice. And this can happen even on a day-to-day basis. Some rounds we are very attentive, and some rounds we're just waiting when the japa will get over. So this happens. Now here is where our introspection can help us. That we have to recognize, the first stage in bhakti is to understand I am not the body. And that is important. But after that, as we advance in bhakti, we also have to understand I am not the mind. And what does it mean to understand I am not the mind? That basically means the mind is inside us. Often we refer to internal and external with reference to the body. So, okay, this laptop is external to me. And my thoughts inside are internal to me. But the perspective of external and internal this perspective of external and internal is also based on a bodily conception of life. Because my reference point for deciding what is external and what is internal is my body. But if I understand that I am the soul, then it is even the mind that is external to me. The mind is external to me. And when I understand that the mind is external to me, then at that time, what happens is I differentiate. Hey, these desires are coming. They are there inside me, but they are not my desires. To give a simple example of what this means, suppose I am working on a computer and I am going on one site and surfing something, reading something over there. And suddenly someone comes along, hey, why don't you open that site? I say, no, I am reading here. I don't want to go there. I want to read something else. So if somebody literally comes externally and tells me, hey, why don't you open that site? We will actually evaluate. Should I open or should I not open? We will think, who is this person? How trustworthy is this person? What is this person telling about? We'll think a lot about it. But suppose we are just on a site and suddenly something pops up. So because it's just coming from where we are, we might just click and go there immediately. So although it is not coming from an external source, still, visiting that site was not our desire. It was just a proposition that came from within. And because if that same proposition had been given by someone else, we would have thought, should I visit, should I not visit? But if that proposition just comes automatically from the computer, it just pops up over there, we just click and go there. So like that, just as although it's our computer, everything that pops up in our computer is not according to our desires. So things may pop up on their own. So like that, although it's our own inner territory, everything that pops up in our inner territory is not necessarily our desire. So it is sometimes just like if we may have visited a particular site, or nowadays Google also tracks what kind of sites we visit and they customize advertisements accordingly. So we might have gone to a particular site and similar sites now suddenly come up. Although we are not interested in going towards those sites now. But they just pop up like that. So so our mind also has this, we could say, default programming. So if we have done some things in the past, then the mind will again propose those things. In Google, we have autocomplete. We start typing a particular site. If I visited a site earlier, then even if we don't want to visit that site now, that autocomplete happens. And it goes to that site. So like that, what happens is when we are thinking about something, the mind autocompletes on its own ways. And certain thoughts keep coming up. So we need to recognize that our feelings are different from our mind's feelings. So what is coming inside us, everything that is coming inside me is not necessarily me. All the desires inside me are not my desires. Just as the pop-up in a computer is not necessarily our desire. So like that, if some desire comes, just as if somebody else would tell us, why don't you do that? Why don't you go here? Why don't you see this site? We would evaluate. Similarly, if something pops up in our mind also, we shouldn't think this is my desire, I have to do it. We should evaluate it. So that means sometimes we may feel, I just don't feel like practicing bhakti. I don't feel like chanting. So we evaluate. Is this really my feeling? Is it coming? Is it going? If we evaluate it, if we dwell on that feeling, it will grow more and more. But if you just evaluate it and say, no, this is not my feeling. Not my feeling means it is there inside me. But this is not the feeling I want to cultivate. This is not the feeling that is according to my values. And therefore, I'll not focus on it. And if you don't focus on that feeling, it will just go away on its own. It may just stay there for some time, but gradually it will go away. This is one thing about our feelings, that whatever feelings we have, there is certain amount of emotional energy or thought energy associated with any feeling that comes within us. But if we dwell on it, we give it more and more energy. And then that feeling becomes stronger and stronger. So for example, say, now you're sitting here, and the way you're sitting on the floor, it may not be very comfortable. But if you focus on the fact, hey, this is not comfortable, and that's what you keep thinking on, then what happens? The feeling of discomfort keeps increasing more and more. But on the other hand, just put it aside and focus on something else. Okay, this class is going on, let me focus on that. And then if you become absorbed in that, we forget also that, oh, I was feeling uncomfortable. So quite often, when we don't have any focus, any purposeful thing to do, when we don't have any important thing to do, or we don't consider the thing which we are doing important, then the mind makes unimportant things important. So when we don't consider the important, the mind makes the unimportant important. That's why the way to go through this stage of Ghanatarla, when there is laxity and the practice of bhakti, we need to remind ourselves, okay, why am I practicing this? How this is important for me? And that's why Shastric study is very helpful. That whatever practice of bhakti that we are doing, Prabhupada would say, now deity worship is so wonderful. We directly get to approach Krishna, address Krishna, serve Krishna. It is very enlivening. But Prabhupada said, if you are not hearing regularly, actually spiritual master would say that, and Prabhupada would quote him that deity worship itself, which is so enlivening, will start feeling that it is like a burden around my neck. Why has my spiritual master put this burden around my neck and I have to carry it all around? So if we don't hear regularly, then the mind will start feeling, why do I have to do all this? Every day I have to wake, every day I have to bathe, every day I have to offer, every day I have to do this, every day I have to do that. Why do I have to do this? So the way to go beyond, go through the phases when we start feeling lax, is by using our intelligence. And using our intelligence means we have to hear scripture regularly. Hearing scripture strengthens our intelligence. Then we can understand, these feelings, they're not really my feelings. They will come and they will go. So let me just focus on practicing bhakti. And this is, our mind will go through sine waves. Sometimes we'll be very enthusiastic, sometimes we'll be unenthusiastic. So what we need is, there will be inner sine wave, but that doesn't mean it should promote a outer sin wave. Sin wave means we start doing wrong things. No, the wrong desires may be there, but we don't have to act on those desires. It says, temptations may come, we don't have to welcome. It's not that whenever temptation has come, immediately I have to do it. No, we can say, no, I'm not interested in this. We don't have to focus on saying I'm not interested in this. We focus on doing what we are interested in actually. Then automatically, if we invest our thoughts in those feelings that are coming, then those feelings will grow stronger and stronger. But if we don't, if we think that these are my feelings, then naturally we'll think more about them. But if you understand these are just coming because of the past programming of the mind, then we invest our thoughts elsewhere and those feelings will go away on their own. So Ghanatarla is a stage where sometimes we are enthusiastic, sometimes we are lax. And the way we go through it is by hearing from Guru Sadhu Shastra and letting them strengthen our intelligence. By that we go through the stage of Ghanatarla. Then the next stage is Vyudha Vikalpa. Vyudha Vikalpa means alternative. Vyudha is like an array of alternatives. So we start looking for easy alternatives in bhakti. That means, yes, I have to purify myself. I have to develop love for Krishna. But maybe there is some hidden formula somewhere, If I hit some formula, then the process of purification is often demanding. So we want to see if there is some easy way out. And that's why we start exploring various alternatives. So we may think, I'm doing this service. Actually, this is where sometimes the thoughts of This is the mind misappropriates the philosophy also. Like yesterday we were discussing about that, how we should all serve according to our nature. Yes, but the mind can hijack this search. And when the mind hijacks this search, the mind says, whatever you are doing, that is not your nature. So whatever we are doing, the mind takes away our enthusiasm from that. Maybe actually, I'm not meant to be a book distributor. I'm not meant to be a pujari. I cannot do this. I cannot do that. And then basically we say that I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this, because we feel this is not what I'm meant to do. So once one devotee, young disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he was just initiated. Prabhupada would give initiations quite quickly in the early days. So he came and he was like a healthy, well-built person. He said, Swami, he would complain again and again to this. I'm not meant to sit in the temple and chant and, I want to go to the beach. I want to enjoy. I want to do this. So several times Prabhupada would preach to him and tell him various things. And finally Prabhupada just, then go and do it. Do whatever you want. Prabhupada was just so angry. He was taken aback. And devotee was also taken aback. Then afterwards he came, he just stayed there. Afterwards he came back and he said, no Prabhupada, I don't really want to do that. I want to stay with you. So the point here is that the mind often paints what we are doing as very difficult and everything else as very easy. So we start thinking, this is a difficult thing, other things are easy. But actually speaking, once we start doing any service, any service, if you want to do it as a quality service, in a committed way, it's not easy. It requires time, it requires effort, it requires planning. So it requires application. And that is sometimes something which we don't want to do. And when we want to seek easy alternatives, we think that, yes, if I just hit some formula, then I'll be able to march forward in bhakti. But actually, there is no mechanical formula. There is a purification of the heart that is required, and that requires effort. So this searching for alternatives, it can go in various directions. For example, we may think that, we are going for a regular program at some place. This preacher doesn't give very good classes. My temple president, he is very authoritative, or whatever. It can go to any. My spouse is not good. My this is not good. My that is not good. We always start comparing ourselves unfavorably with others. See, in the first stage is what? The stage of utsaha, we compare ourselves favorably with others. I am better than everyone. But now we start thinking, we start feeling sorry for ourselves. And actually, self-pity is not humility. Self-pity, feeling sorry for oneself, that is not humility actually. That is simply self-centeredness. Now, I'm not saying that there can be situations where changing externals can also help. Sometimes some devotees, we may just not get along with them. And it may be that working with some other devotees who are like-minded, that might help us to progress steadily in bhakti. But that is a decision which has to be taken not on the impulse of the mind, but has to be taken with mature consideration based on intelligence. Here, when the state of vikalpa, the mind is simply wanting to flit from one thing to the other, thinking that this is not good, maybe that is good, maybe that is good, maybe that is good. And comparing our situation with that of others is one of the easiest ways to make ourselves miserable. Comparing ourselves. Because what happens is, the nature of the world is that from outside, everything looks easy. Everything looks comfortable. But if we go inside, everybody has their problems. Every situation has its own issues. So, yes, sometimes change of situation may be required, but here we start thinking that change of situation itself is a solution. No, the solution is change of consciousness. The solution is purification. In some cases, purification may be easier through a change of situation. So here what happens, now sometimes we may be put in a situation where, say, because of our job, because of our family, or whatever reasons, we are away from devotees. We're not able to come to the temple regularly, we're not able to associate with devotees regularly. Now at that time, sometimes, even then, we can practice bhakti to some extent. We may preach to others and bring them to Krishna, and we may create a small spiritual circle over there. Or we can associate online and get some association. We can associate through social media. Whatever situation we are in, We need to practice bhakti in that situation. Yes, certainly other situations may be better. So, for example, if we are in a place away from devotees and we would like to come to a place which is closer to devotees, yes, that is a good desire. But it is not that when we are away from devotees, we are constantly lamenting, why am I away, why am I away, why am I away? No, even at that time, we should be practicing bhakti. And we can also strive to improve the situation. But here, the improving the situation becomes the mind's escape way for not improving the disposition, for not improving the attitude, improving the consciousness. No, we can always focus on improving our consciousness. Along with that, we can make some efforts for improving the situation also when it is necessary. And the mind, it is always, for all practical purposes in our life, we can make an equation. Maya is equal to the mind. For all practical, philosophically, Maya is an energy, and she is Krishna's energy. She works for fulfilling Krishna's purpose. But for practical purposes, Maya is equal to the mind. Now, it's not that everything that the mind says is Maya. Sometimes the mind may say good things also. But quite often, Maya acts through our mind. So, commitment, we need to be committed to practice. Commitment means to do what we can with what we have now. To do what we can with what we have now. Okay, I have only this much time. My job takes so much time. So I have only so much of time only to practice bhakti. Okay, fine. Whatever time we have, do what we can with what we have now. Srila Prabhupada, for 40 years when he was preaching, he had practically no assistants at all. So he did what he could with what he has then. Last year when I had gone to America, I went to New York to the Lower East Side, 26 2nd Avenue, where Srila Prabhupada had the first center. So that was like a dream for me to go there. It's like a Western pilgrimage center. So when I went there, the first reaction was actually a disappointment, because I had built up the idea that it's such a wonderful place. But then when I went there, it struck me that this is just another place in the neighborhood. There's nothing special, nothing spiritual about that place. Of course, the management there renovated it to make it look more modern. So that traditional feel of 1960s is also not there in that. But the thing is, first I felt that there's nothing special about this. But then it struck me that Prabhupada did not wait for anything special for his preaching to start. Now, there was nothing spiritual about the circumstances which he was in, but without waiting for anything spiritual, he started off his preaching. He did not wait for funds, he did not wait for followers, he did not wait for contacts, he did not wait for organizational support. He just continued preaching. And that was his commitment. So as says, if we wait for inspiration, we are waiters. We are not devotees. Yes, we all need inspiration in our life. And if there are some devotees who are inspiring, some services that are inspiring, some situations that are inspiring, we can seek those situations. But we cannot let our bhakti stay on a pause till we get inspiration. We do bhakti with whatever commitment we have. And when Krishna gives inspiration, we use that inspiration to increase our commitment. So if we keep waiting for inspiration, then that wait can go on for all of eternity. Because ultimately, bhakti is our choice. Our spiritual master can help us, the Vaishnavas can help us, but it is we who have to choose Krishna. And that choice, nobody else can do that choice for us. And when the mind goes through this thinking of viewed vikalpa, maybe this would have been better, this would have been better, this would have been better. Now we can turn on the mind and say, okay, see, bhakti, it's my life and it's my choice. Nobody forced me to practice bhakti. I have chosen to practice bhakti. This is the situation I am in. Now it's up to me. Do I want to practice this or not? Now, if suddenly we are told stop practicing bhakti, most of us understand the value of bhakti enough to not give up its practice. But the mind tricks us. The mind won't directly bring sense gratification in a very gross way, which will make us fall away from bhakti. What the mind does is, it doesn't make us give up bhakti, it makes us give up our enthusiasm in bhakti. So we are there in bhakti, but like sometimes there are small children, they don't want to go somewhere. But they say, I'm not going to come, then the parents will force them. So they come along, but while coming along, they are just dragging their feet. So the parents practically have to pull them all the time, come. And that way, they make a pretense that I am doing what my parents want me to do, but they're not actually doing it. So the mind does like that. The mind doesn't say, I will not practice bhakti. But but if only, I had a more understanding authority, I would practice bhakti. If I had a more understanding family, I would practice bhakti. If I had better health, I would practice bhakti. If my financial situation would be better, I would practice bhakti. So the mind comes up with various excuses. Now all these can be genuine problems and they need to be tackled with. But we didn't have to stop practicing bhakti for these things. So Vyuda Vikalpa means basically the mind comes up with alternatives by which it says, I will not practice bhakti because of this, this, this. Then the next stage after that is visaya-sangara. Visaya-sangara means fighting with the sense objects. Sangraha is fighting, sangram as you say. So visaya-sangara is we fight with the sense objects. So quite often we may blame others. So for example, what happens is, say if I overeat, if there's gulab jamun, I ate 10, 15 gulab jamuns. Then after that, hey, gulab jamun, why did you come in my plate? We can't blame the sense object. It is we who indulge in the sense object. So like that, when we are fighting with the sense objects, what happens is, we start blaming others. Because of you, I fell down. Because of you, this happened. Because of you, that happened. So Krishna, when he talks about lust, he talks about in say 3.36 to 43. So there, in 3.40, he talks about the location of lust. And interestingly, he says, Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhishthanam uchyate etair vimoha yatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam. So he says, Indriyani mano buddhir. The senses, mind and intelligence. This is where the lust is situated. So this means Krishna is saying it is not that lust is situated in the sense object. He's saying lust is situated in our own senses, our own mind, our own intelligence. And that's why the process, he says, for purifying is we have to purify our own senses, our own mind, our own intelligence. So we can't blame others for our weaknesses. When we start blaming others, then that basically we alienate others, and further we start shifting the responsibility from ourselves to others. It doesn't work like that. We have to recognize that yes, there are just like certain sites, certain people may dress inappropriately, and that may trigger lust within us. But we have to understand that pressing a trigger in a bullet in a gun will have no effect if there is no bullet in it. So the sight of the sense objects may trigger lust within us. But that lust is already there within us. We can't blame them for that. The point is that if we start blaming others, then we shift the focus from purifying ourselves to just blaming others. So if there are certain, I'll talk more about triggers and how to deal with the triggers. But before that, it is important to not blame others for our struggle with the with the senses. So I answer questions on my website, and because people can ask, and sometimes people may not ask questions openly in a class, but they ask questions privately because they don't have to tell their names. So once I got a question from a Mataji. She said that she and her sister, they were from their childhood very religious people. And they had decided that we would marry men only who are devoted to God. This is in India. And then she said that my sister, she had her workplace, she met a devoted Christian man. And she developed a relationship with him, she married him. And he said, I met a Hare Krishna devotee. And I found he's very serious in his bhakti. So he said, I married the Hare Krishna devotee. And she said that, my sister's husband, his religion teaches him to see a good wife as a gift of God, as a blessing from God. But he says, my husband always treats me like a temptation who has deviated him from God. So, is this the way I am meant to feel throughout my life? So sometimes I feel as if, my life would have been better if I had married a Christian instead of Hare Krishna. So then I gave an elaborate answer. Actually, this is a complete misunderstanding of what Grahastha Ashram is. In the Grahastha Ashram, the husband and the wife, they are partners. They are not opponents. And, the overall, both, it's not that, it's not that the husband and the wife, they are temptations for each other. It is rather husband and wife are together fighting temptations. So if the family life is essentially a partnership. And yes, it's not only that the wife is a temptation for the husband can also be a temptation for wife. The Bhagavatam talks both ways. Usually the scriptures are written from a male perspective. That's why often a woman may be talking about the source of temptation. But in the 4th canto, there's also this. Just for a woman, a man can be a temptation. He talks about it just as a deer may be attracted by a snare, by the sound of a flute. So like that, a woman may be attracted by a man and misled by a man. That example also comes in the Bhagavatam. The point is, temptation is gender neutral. It is not temptation is gender specific. Whichever gender we belong to, temptations will come to all of us. And as a couple, we have to together fight temptation. So if we start blaming others for our weaknesses, then we are creating in what is meant to be a partnership an unnecessary combat. So that means that the husband and wife, when they are practicing bhakti, the Bhagavatam may talk about, say, a wife being a temptation, but then Bhagavatam also talks about the kingdom being a temptation, property being a temptation, everything can be a temptation. And we have to remember, the Bhagavatam is spoken to Parikshit Maharaj, who has renounced the world and who is about to die. So at that time, everything in the world is a temptation. Everything in the world is a distraction. But it is not that, say, Ram and Sita are in the forest. Ram is not telling Sita, you are a temptation for me. No. So, if we are living in Grihastha ashram and we are functioning in the world, we have to function as partners. So, if we start blaming others, the blaming can be generically, people dress in such obscene ways. And that's why I can't control my senses. Or it can be specific way. Any kind of blaming, it is a mind strategy to avoid responsibility, basically. Now, having said that, we all need to, so we have to see that, there's that vision of Shiva and Parvati, they're together. What is that called? Ardhanarishwara. So basically, husband and wife are like two people who have come together. So they're partners. That should never be forgotten. Having said that, we all need to recognize that there is, our own consciousness goes through various areas. So in our consciousness, we can broadly categorize into, there is safe zone, there is temptation zone, there is danger zone, and there is relapse or fall zone. What does that mean? Just like to give a simple topographical example, say if there is a steep mountain cliff from which there is a fall. Now, people may go on top of a mountain to see the sight over there. And if one is at a sufficient distance from the cliff's edge, one can see the sights without being any danger. So that's the safe zone on that mountain cliff. But if one starts going too close to the cliff, then that means in the danger zone. And then if one just goes right to the edge of the slip and one's leg has gone down, then that's the fall zone. So, like that for us, in dealing with our consciousness, our consciousness also goes through these different zones. So, there is always some agitation of consciousness. But that agitation is usually a tolerable agitation. It is not an agitation that is making us so wild and restless that we have to immediately indulge in our senses. So we normally situate ourselves in the safe zone. Okay, then if I'm doing these activities, most of the time we'll find that if we are busy, if we keep ourselves busy, not just physically running around, but mind absorbed, then we are not all that agitated. So absorption in Krishna is the safe zone for our consciousness. Not just absorption in Krishna alone. Actually, it can be absorption in anything constructive also. Even in our job, if we're absorbed, then we can stay safe. So that is the safe zone for our consciousness. So we need to identify what is a safe zone and absorb ourselves in that. And then, especially within our own bhakti, we can find out those things which enable us to absorb ourselves easily. And this is also a big subject in itself, the concept of rasa. But in Bhakti Samrat Sindhu, in rasa talks about something called as the uddipan. Uddipan means spiritual stimulus. So all of us, I talked about Uddipan in the Holy Name seminar, didn't I? How many of you were there for the Holy Name seminar? Oh, okay. So Uddipan basically is a spiritual stimulus. That means for all of us, we may find that, say, a particular deities or a particular picture of the deities, a particular tune of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, maybe a particular Vaishnava song, a particular shloka, or a particular place, its picture, its memory, that may trigger spiritual emotion within us. And when that spiritual emotion is triggered, we become absorbed in it. So then, here, we all need to find out what is our Uddipan. That may vary from person to person. Some people may just go in front of the deities and they may feel, oh, this is, just by looking at the deities, this is Krishna himself, he is here. And we feel very prayerful and very devotional by going in front of the deities. Some others, they may find that actually when you sit down with Shastra and start studying Shastra and reciting verses, then we feel very absorbed. So we have to find out what is our spiritual stimuli. And by that, we can, that if we start exposing ourselves to spiritual stimuli, we place ourselves in the safe zone of bhakti. So now, apart from the safe zone is the danger zone. Danger zone means that is the time when the agitation starts becoming strong. That's the time when the desires, they are there, they're just there as a faint background noise, but then they start coming in the foreground. That can happen from both ways. That can sometimes happen. The 11th canto, the Uddhava Gita, I said that sometimes the sense objects come toward the senses, sometimes the senses go toward the sense objects. That means that the desires becoming stronger, they may sometimes happen because of external stimuli, or they may also happen sometimes because of internal activation of past memories. So either way, whichever way it happens, when the agitation starts becoming stronger, that time we notice that this, I am in the danger zone now. So then, when we go into the danger zone, we need to have some uddipan, some spiritual stimuli ready for us, by we can recite some verse, or we can sing some song, we can pray to the deities, we have a picture of our deities on the phone, and then by that spiritual stimuli, we pull ourselves back into the safe zone. That is the danger zone. And when I said there are triggers, so if this is the safe zone, this is the danger zone, then the triggers are what take us from the safe zone to the danger zone. And the stimuli, then the uddipan is what takes us back to the safe zone. So we have to find out what our triggers are also. So all of us, we all have lust, anger, greed, envy, pride and illusion. But still, the specific ways in which it may attack us may be different. So we have to find out. Maybe, say if I am going from home to office, and along the way, there are some hoardings, there are some billboards with some nasty images over there. So then if I see them, I get agitated. Then I may make a plan, that it may take a few minutes more, but I might just take some other road and go. Or I might consciously plan not to look in that direction. But usually, when we tell the mind, don't look in that direction, what happens is, the more we focus on the negative, not doing something, just like, if your children go into teenage, then there is a teenage rebellion that comes in. And then the very thing we tell them don't do, they do it just because of that rebelliousness. Not because they like it, but just because the teenage hormones are so rebellious that they want to do it, just because they're told not to do it. So like that, sometimes if you tell the mind, don't do this, that's what the mind wants to do. So rather than focusing on telling the mind what you should not do, we can focus on what the mind can do. Maybe we can have some nice kirtans going on, or have some absorbing lecture going on at that time in our car itself or whatever. Then we are focused on doing something constructive. And if that is the focus, then it's much easier to say no to whatever we are saying, whatever we don't want to indulge in. So our focus in bhakti always has to be on the positive. We have to be aware of the negative, what we should give up. But our focus has to be on the positive, what I should be doing. It's like, say, if I have this bottle. Now, if I say that, I will empty this bottle of all air, it's very difficult to keep it empty, to make a vacuum in it. And even if I succeed in making a vacuum, a slight change in the lid position or something, immediately air will go inside. But if I want to remove the air from it, if instead I focus on filling it with water, then automatically the air will go out. So like that, our focus should be on filling our consciousness with Krishna. And automatically, the temptations will go away. But still, we can be aware. If I know, okay, there is a leak in this bottle somewhere over here, then I have to make sure, especially that is closed. So like that, if we have certain triggers, we need to take care that we don't expose ourselves to those triggers unnecessarily. So we cannot avoid all exposure in today's world. But we can, if certain things are especially agitating, we can take special precautions to avoid that. So for example, nowadays with internet available everywhere, just by clicking a few buttons, we can access all kinds of nasty sites. So if that is a problem, then we can have a net filter, internet filter, which blocks certain sites. So, we are surfing on the net. Sometimes surfing on the net ends up becoming suffering on the net. You just get caught in one thing, second thing, third thing, fourth thing. So we have to ourselves know our triggers, and we have to protect ourselves from the triggers. This is something which is our own work. Nobody else can do it for us. Because we have to know what our triggers are. And in that way, we can have those things which protect us, they take us towards Krishna. And the whole thing in visaya-sangara, in the battle of the sense objects, usually it is that the impulses come very strongly, sometimes. And when they come very strongly, at that time, for a few moments or a few minutes, our intelligence is completely lost. Now, if at that time, the sense object is immediately available for us, then we may indulge. But if we can endure those few minutes when the desire is very strong, then after that our intelligence gets restored and say, I don't need to do this. So that's why we can create, say if the sense object is here, I am here, then we can create some blockers between us and the sense objects. Whatever are our triggers, we can create some blockers. So the net filter, which I said, having a net filter on our phone or having a net filter on our computers, that is basically a blocker. The urge comes to see something on the net, and if it's so easily available, just click a button and everything, the whole world of degradation opens up for us. But if there is just a filter, there is some blocker in between, and then that stops us during that time. And if that few moments itself we can stop, then during that time, quite often the intelligence gets restored. So this is, bhakti is not just about, chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna Mahamantra is like a machine gun. We have to shoot the machine gun, but we have to know whom to shoot with the machine gun also. Isn't it? So, we have to know what our anarthas are, and we have to know how we can battle with the anarthas. Otherwise, if we don't take these precautions, then we may just go on chanting for a long time, but still we keep exposing ourselves to our triggers and we keep falling. So, with chanting Hare Krishna is purifying, but we also have to use the potency of chanting to purify ourselves. We have to find out what our weaknesses are and we deal with them. And visaya-sangara is something which, as we keep practicing bhakti more and more, it gradually becomes easier. Because two things happen as we keep practicing bhakti. First is, as we keep practicing bhakti and getting purified, we start relishing Krishna more and more. And secondly, we also start recognizing the staleness of sense objects. Yes, there's nothing great in this. And then gradually that shift of our focus from the world to the sense objects, from the world to Krishna will happen. And during this period, we don't have to become too discouraged or too disheartened. The important thing is just keep practicing bhakti. Even if we are defeated in the battle with the sense objects, that doesn't mean that we have to give up bhakti. See, we may fall down, but we don't have to fall away. Fall down means we are on the path of bhakti and we fall down. We are unable to follow the standards. So, we may fall down. But falling away means giving up bhakti. So, nothing should make us give up bhakti. No matter how badly we are defeated in our battle with the sense objects, still, that is a fall down. But fall down, so sometimes the force of the mind may make us fall down. But the mind cannot make us fall away. The mind cannot make us give up bhakti. What I mean by that is, let's say, this is our normal state of consciousness, where there is some background agitation, but we are not like haunted by desire. But within that, sometimes there are, just like if you see the power in electric current, there sometimes power spikes. So the electric current is at this level, suddenly there is a spike which goes to this level. And then it comes back. And what happens when the spike goes to that level, if there is no spike guard or something, then the device may get damaged. But if there is a spike guard, then the normal electricity is essential for us, and normal electricity is not harmful. So like that, sometimes in our consciousness, there are spikes which come up. And when the spikes come up, we may just become helpless at that time. No matter what our resolutions, whatever our convictions, at that time we just feel just overwhelmed by desire. So the important thing is that not what happens during the spikes. The important thing is what happens before and after the spikes. If after the spike we are just lamenting, why did I do that? 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 No, during that time we should be focusing on Krishna. We should be focusing on connecting with Krishna and purifying ourselves. Then, if we are purifying ourselves that way, then what are we doing by that? We are increasing our strength. And then gradually when the spikes come, we'll be able to resist those spikes also. So if the spikes come and we fall also because of those spikes, we needn't become that spike conscious. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And so this was for a few minutes or for some time there was a spike. But after that, for several days, our consciousness is relatively calm. But during that time, if we are thinking, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why do I do that? That time goes away and the next spike comes. And again we fall. And again we are thinking, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? But how it is, imagine if you have a boss and the boss tells you, come on, you go and do this work. And then you do that work and then he tells you, why did you do that? He says, you only told me. Oh, why did you do that? You should have used your intelligence. That's a waste of time. So like that, working with such a person would be impossible. First you tell you to do one thing and then you just tell me for doing that only. So the mind is like that. First it makes us fall for sense objects. And then it says, why did you fall for the sense objects? So basically what the mind is doing is, it's using a very deceptive double role. First it acts as a tempter and then it acts as a moralizer. So it first causes us to fall morally and then it chastises us for falling morally. So basically, stop being mind conscious. Okay, I fell, doesn't matter. Now let me not think about that, let me think about Krishna. We focus on Krishna. So what happens during the phases of spikes may not be in our control. But what happens in between those spikes is definitely in our control. And if that we focus on, at that time we are trying to focus on Krishna, trying to intensify our practice of bhakti, then after that, gradually the spikes we will be able to tolerate the spikes also and we will be able to give them up. So visaya-sangara, winning over it is going to be a gradual process. And when we are battling through it, at that time there's no need to become too disheartened by it. One big problem comes up is, in the practice of bhakti, is that we become too temptation-centered rather than Krishna-centered. Just the capacity to give up temptation is not the sole marker of advancement in devotion. There can be Mayavadis who may be renunciates, but they have no devotion for Krishna. So our process is to develop devotion for Krishna. And as a result of developing devotion, temptations will also go away. We shouldn't think that my spiritual life begins and ends with how much I am able to resist temptation. No, there is much more to spiritual life than battling with temptations. And whatever be our status quo right now in our battle with temptations, we keep practicing bhakti, we keep intensifying our bhakti as much as possible. So, our success in winning against temptation alone doesn't mean that we have become advanced devotees. And our failure in the battle against temptation alone does not mean that we are degraded devotees or we are fallen people. Bhakti is defined by many things apart from the battle with temptations. How much we are committed in our overall service to Krishna, how much we are taking up responsibility for Krishna, how much we are attracted to Krishna and the process of bhakti. All those are so important. And that's what we should focus on. And then it's if we are nourishing ourselves in bhakti, then even the spikes come gradually, we will be able to tolerate the spikes, and gradually the spikes' amplitude themselves will also start decreasing. So this is visaya-sangara. And then last stage in this is, there are two more actually. Niyamakshama. Niyamakshama. Kshama means capable. Akshama means not capable. So, niyamakshama means inability to stick to our resolutions. We may make a resolution, from tomorrow, I'll wake up and complete all my rounds in the morning. And then 1 week it goes on and afterwards, life comes in the way. And then we go from completing all our rounds in the morning, we may say, We leave all our rounds for the night only. No, niyamakshama means we find ourselves incapable of sticking to our resolutions. Now when this happens, we have to know that bhakti is very subtle. First of all, resolutions are good. And even if we are not able to stick to resolutions, we make resolutions and stick for a few days. Even for few days, we are benefited. What the mind does is, because I have not been able to stick to resolutions, the mind says, don't make any resolutions only. No, that's not necessary. In fact, see, we all have to deal with our own mind. And we have to find out what is the nature of our mind and find out a way to deal with it. So sometimes I have found that making different resolutions at different times helps. So if I say, for the rest of my life, I'm going to do this. Every day I'll study 1 hour or 3 hour or 4 hour Shastra, whatever. It doesn't work. But there are so many things which can improve in our spiritual life, and we can choose different things at different times. Okay, 1 week I'll focus on my chanting. Every day I'll chant in the morning. 1 week I'll focus on reading Shastra every day. 1 week I'll focus on having a very nice consciousness while doing deity worship or whatever. So that way the mind doesn't feel. What happens is, sometimes if I have to carry a brick, the brick is not very difficult to carry. It's a small weight. But if I have to carry the brick for the next, say, 72 hours, then the brick starts becoming like a burden. And when I think I have to carry it for the next 72 hours, it starts becoming a burden in 5 minutes only. Because I think that I have to do it for such a long time. So sometimes if we think that I make a resolution for a whole lifetime, then the mind makes that into a big burden. So instead of making lifetime resolutions, we can make short resolutions. And that way, the mind doesn't feel, oh, you're forbidding me from this forever. But if we make a resolution for a short time, and then later on, we can make a resolution about some other thing. Like that, we are improving various things in our spiritual life. And the mind also looks for newness. So if there are some new resolutions, the mind doesn't resent it so much. So basically, this may work. I'm just giving a strategy about how we can make our resolutions. We don't have to think that just because I can't stick to my resolution doesn't mean I have no determination. It just means that we have to find out how we can access our determination. We have to find out the way in which we can act in a determined way. It is not the same for everyone. And in bhakti, it is important that bhakti is very subtle. So sometimes our strengths can become our weaknesses. And conversely, our weaknesses can become our strengths. What does that mean? Our strengths can become our weaknesses. Say, if I resolve, I will never take sweets anymore in my life. Now, okay, I make a resolution. I may succeed in that. But if by that success I become proud. So, okay, I have controlled my tongue, but I have in the process inflated my ego. And then that is another anartha. And I may be sticking to my resolution, but I may not be going closer to Krishna. If my ego is becoming bigger, I'm not going closer to Krishna. Sometimes our strengths, those things which we can do well, they can make us proud, and if we become proud, then they become our weaknesses. Then what happens? Whatever we are good at, we start taking shelter of that instead of taking shelter of Krishna. Whenever we want confidence, we want inspiration, we start doing that, and we are not really thinking about Krishna. Or somebody may be very good at music, and they can sing kirtans very nicely, and they can absorb themselves in Krishna by that. But sometimes it becomes, if we focus too much on music, then it becomes more of a musical performance than a devotional performance. Now, it's not wrong to sing nicely for Krishna's service and to learn music for Krishna. That's also good. But sometimes that music can become a substitute for Krishna. Instead of becoming a path to Krishna, we just delight only in the music without thinking of Krishna. So we have to be careful. Just because somebody is able to stick to resolutions, that does not necessarily mean that they are advancing. It can mean that they are advancing, but our strengths, if they make us proud, then they can become our weaknesses. In contrast, our weaknesses, some resolutions we're just not able to do. Some anarthas we're just not able to overcome. If those anarthas, if those weaknesses, they can make us realize our dependence on Krishna. They can make us understand, without Krishna I cannot do this. I need Krishna. If they can awaken within awaken within us that urgent need for Krishna, then they can become actually our strengths. Because they become the impellers for us to go seriously towards Krishna. So our weaknesses can also become our strengths. So when we are trying to stick to our resolutions, we shouldn't simply think that succeeding in our resolutions necessarily means success in bhakti. Yes, it can and it should mean like that, but it is not by default. It's not that failure in our resolutions is necessarily a failure in bhakti. Sometimes I may fail in a resolution, and if that makes me more dependent on Krishna, it makes me more humble, then actually by failing in that resolution, I may go closer to Krishna. And by succeeding in that resolution, I may go away from Krishna. And as far as niyamakshama, when we make resolutions and we try to stick to resolutions, we also need to, it's very good if we can have what is called a accountability partner. Accountability partner means if you are planning to do something, if say I am planning to study Shastra, if I decide I want to memorize verses. So memorizing verses alone is fine. But if we decide, we have some other devotee also is interested in memorizing verses, and we make a partnership. So every week I want to memorize one verse. And then whenever we meet, what are the verse you memorized? So when we meet, so that devotee asks us, what did you memorize? And we ask that devotee, what did you memorize? Just that simple thing. Having somebody with whom we can share our resolutions, that what it does is, see, we are not pure devotees. And trying to imagine that we can be pure devotees right now, that actually keeps us quite often in illusion. So if we tell someone, I'm going to do this, then what happens? There is some sense of pride also that comes. I want to do this now. Otherwise, what face will I show to them? And if because of that we do that thing, that's not the best motive. But at our level, beggars are not choosers. So, yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshet. Somehow or other fix the mind on Krishna. So if we have some accountability partner with us, and then every day I'm going to memorize, every day I'm going to read scripture for half an hour, whatever. And then whenever we meet, ask, how much did you read? Or how much did I read? And then that way, having some association that not only brings the two devotees closer to each other, but it also helps us in sticking to our resolutions, whatever they may be. So that way we can overcome this obstacle of niyamakshama. And then the last one is, it is tarangini. Rangini is delighting. Taranga is the waves. So there's an ocean of devotion, and we want to dive deep into the ocean of devotion. But at the surface there are waves, and we delight in the waves. That means at this stage what we do? We delight in the fringe benefits of bhakti. What are the fringe benefits of bhakti? When we are practicing bhakti, others may praise us, others may respect us, we may become popular. And that is what gives us great joy. So that is, bhakti offers these benefits also. Now we say, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam, va jagdish kame. We don't want any of these things. But actually if we practice bhakti, quite often, Krishna sent these such things to us to test us. So at that time, what we need to do is, we have to remember our purpose. So we are practicing bhakti for ultimately we want to practice bhakti for loving Krishna. But right now, we practice bhakti for purity, for purifying our heart. Not for productivity, not for popularity. Productivity means, how many books I have distributed, or how many this I have done, how many people I have made into devotees, or how many people come for my class. All these things are externals. Actually, if we strive for purity, productivity and popularity all will follow afterwards. But if we pursue productivity and popularity, then we will lose purity. So we have to put first things first. Put purity first. And certainly as devotees, we want to preach. We want to share Krishna's message with others. But that sharing should be because of we are connected with Krishna. We are happy in our Krishna consciousness. And that's why we want to share with others. Yes, Krishna consciousness is so wonderful. Why don't you also practice it? But sometimes instead of, we are not practicing bhakti seriously. We are not remembering Krishna. And we are not happy in our Krishna bhakti. Then our outer preaching becomes a substitute for our inner reaching. Inner reaching means we are meant to reach Krishna. And we think because so many people appreciate my singing, because so many people come for my lectures, because so many people like my service, like whatever I am doing, they praise what I am doing, that's why I am a good devotee. No, certainly this can be the signs that I am a good devotee, but the primary sign of that I am a good devotee is I am connected with Krishna. I am remembering Krishna. I feel satisfied in the remembrance of Krishna. So in the fringe benefits of bhakti, if we delight too much, we can't we can't, we don't have to make it a rigid rule that I will not delight in these things. It doesn't work like that. Bhakti is a composite package. If somebody gives a class in which they crack a joke, at that time we should be thinking, am I laughing for my pleasure or Krishna's pleasure? No, if there is a joke, just laugh. That's fine. But we should not rate spiritual wisdom based on the laughter test. That means, if somebody's class, there are a lot of jokes, good speaker. It's a good class. And no jokes, boring speaker, No, spiritual wisdom, we can't rate it based on the laughter test. But if in the spiritual wisdom, in the process of giving spiritual wisdom, if there is entertainment, if there is humor, that's wonderful. So it's not that, so I'll conclude with this point, like this is the circle of things that give us pleasure. And say this is the circle of things that give Krishna pleasure or that are devotional activities. Now it's not that the two are entirely non-intersecting. It is not that in order to selflessly serve Krishna, Krishna wants us to be the miserable for the rest of our lives. Not like that. So the thing is, there is a significant intersection between these two. The things that we like to do, that give us pleasure, and the things that are in the realm of bhakti and which give Krishna pleasure. Now we will be naturally happy when we are situated in that circle. So if we are of an intellectual orientation, and somebody gives very intellectually appealing classes, we like that. If we like music very much, and somebody sings very beautifully music, we like that. If we like aesthetic decorations, and somebody dresses the deities very beautifully, we will naturally feel absorbed in that kind of decoration of the deities. Now this is good. So this is where we are situated in the intersection. And the whole principle of Varnashram is actually to be situated in the intersection. Now if I am a Brahmana, I do Brahmanical work for Krishna. So we should situate ourselves in the intersection. But at the same time, within what we like, there are things which are outside the realm of bhakti also. So we shouldn't just seek those things and give up bhakti for that sake. And second thing is, there are things in bhakti which are not necessarily in our liking zone. If our service requires us to do those things, we should do those also. It's not that we have to go out of our way to do the things that we don't like to do. Not like that. Just like a simple example is prasad. Now suppose in prasad, there is some item which we like very much. Now it is not that in order to practice bhakti purely, I should not eat the things that I like. It's not like that. If we like that, then that is, if there is some item which we like, and that is in the intersection circle of both what is connected with Krishna and what is likable to us. We can eat that naturally. But suppose there is prasad which you don't like. So therefore I'll not take prasad only, and I'll take non-prasad because I don't like this. Then that is not good. So what we need to do is, if we can situate ourselves in the intersection of the two, that is fine. But if we can't be situated in the intersection, then if bhakti requires us to do some things which are not necessarily according to our liking, if we have to do it for some time, we should be ready to do that. But it's not that we seek the material benefits that come from bhakti and forget the process of bhakti or neglect the process of bhakti in the process. When that happens, then there is a serious problem that comes up. So tarangini is something which we can avoid if we are doing sadhana properly. Because especially our chanting and even our scriptural study, that keeps reminding us of our purpose. In chanting, really there's not much fringe benefit that we can get. In kirtans, at least there is some music, there is some other things, maybe we are dancing. There are other things which we can't focus on Krishna too much. But in chanting, there's not much we can focus on other than Krishna. So, when we are doing the core devotional activities, hearing and chanting, that reminds us of what is the sagara and what is the taranga in the sagara. What is the real ocean of bhakti and what are the waves that are moving on the surface of that ocean. And that way we can reorient ourselves towards the ocean. And it is said that when the airplane is moving, say if I came from Canberra to here, so when the airplane is flying in the air, it is said 95% of the time, the airplane is off track. But how does it get to the destination? Because the pilot repeatedly keeps getting it on track. Now, of course, nowadays in airplanes, there are also mechanisms by which, because of the wind, because of the pressure, the airplane goes off track and it comes on track. It goes off track, comes on track. So we shouldn't feel disheartened if we find ourselves going off track. Rather, when we go off track, we get ourselves back on track. We go off track, get ourselves back on track. And like that, we keep moving onwards. If we just become disheartened because I'm going off track, well, that's the way the mind is. We don't have to become disheartened. We have to be prepared for that. And that brings us to concluding slide. Yeah, just keep going. We are not. The mind, one of the way it works is, oh, you are so fallen that you can never become Bhakti devotee. That means the mind, this is actually, the mind is saying that the magnitude of your impurity is greater than the magnitude of Krishna's purifying potency. Actually, what can be a bigger ego than that? This might seem like humility, I am very fallen. No, but that is a very big ego. To think that I am so fallen that even Krishna cannot elevate me. It's like somebody says, Prabhu, you are a little dirty, why don't you go and take a bath? There's a big nice river over there. No, I'm so dirty that by going into that river, the whole river will become dirty. Well, it's not going to happen first of all. And it's just an excuse for not bathing. So, so like that, we should never think that we are too fallen to practice bhakti. Whatever happens, we can always keep practicing bhakti, and in due course of time, we will move onwards. And especially when I first read this, I read the Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu's 9 stages. That itself inspired me very much. But when I read Madhurya Kadambini for the first time, it struck me, the first thing that struck me is that my battles are not my battles alone. It's not that I am going through some special problem that nobody has gone through. Yes, the specific forms of the problems may be special, may be distinctive to me, but overall the problems are similar. So others have weathered the same storms, and by the time-tested process of bhakti, they have gone through the storms. And we too can go through the storms. We just have to keep practicing bhakti, keep practicing. No matter what happens, we just keep continuing in our devotional service, and in due course of time, we will attain Krishna. So I'll summarize. We started with talking about bhakti is basically a spiritual journey, an inner journey, and in that we need a map for that territory. So how this map is first described in the Bhagavatam, then it's further described in Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu, and by specific stages of that, Anartha and Nivrtti are described in the Madhurya Kadambini. We discuss that, go ahead, the 9 stages of how from favorable curiosity, through the association of devotees, through the practice of bhakti, through the removal of anarthas, we come to realized conviction, from a faith of a banana tree to the faith of a banyan tree. And then from there is positive attraction towards Krishna. First we are attached to the process of bhakti, then we are attached to first we get taste in bhakti, then we get attached to the person, to the object of bhakti, and then we start experiencing divine emotions in connection with Krishna, and then we get filled with love for Krishna. And these are not discrete steps, they are overlapping steps. And they are, in this, the long stage is Anartha Nivrtti. And that Anartha Nivrtti is analyzed by Madhurya Kadambini, Vishwanath Chakravarti into 6 stages. Go ahead. So we have these 6 stages. We discuss each of them one by one. Utsaha, where we are enthusiastic to practice bhakti, but it is more of a fad for us. Where externally we want to show what we are doing, not internally purify ourselves. And because of that, we often become judgmental towards others, and we alienate others because of that. So we have to be careful that bhakti is meant for our inner purification, not just for outer ostentation. And discuss the example of weight loss, ghantarla. When we start realizing that actually I have to purify myself internally, we understand it's not so easy to do. So then, sometimes we are very enthusiastic, sometimes we become very apathetic. So for that, we discuss that we have to recognize our feelings are not necessarily our feelings. Just like if somebody tells me to surf a site, I will think, should I do it or should I not do it? But something just pops up, I may just click on it and go there. So like that, sometimes something pops up in our mind, and we just do that. We just dwell on that feeling and act on it. But if you know just that pop-up window is not our desire. Similarly, whatever pops up in our consciousness is also not necessarily our desire. What is within us is not necessarily our desire. So by recognizing that the mind is also external to us as souls, we can evaluate what the thoughts that are coming in the mind, and if they are not what are favorable to our bhakti, just keep them at a distance and then they will go away. And if we don't dwell on the feelings, they won't grow. If we dwell on them, they will grow. So the inner sine wave will be there, but by our distancing ourselves from the feelings that come within us, we can avoid that causing an outer fall for us. Go ahead. Then we discuss vyuda vikalpa. We look for easy alternatives in the process of bhakti. We start feeling that whatever I am doing, that is just a problem. If something else could be there. But There may be sometimes an external situation change of external situation may improve our practice, our facility for practicing bhakti. But even wherever we are, we keep practicing bhakti, and also we can try to improve the situation. We shouldn't focus so much on improving the external situation that we don't practice bhakti at all. So commitment means to do what we can with what we have now. And then after that we discussed visaya-sangara. That's we discussed elaborately, that we shouldn't blame others for our own anarthas and our own temptations, our own weaknesses. That if we are having we can ourselves understand by observing our consciousness what is the safe zone where the agitation is in a tolerable level, and when we go into a danger zone, when it becomes intolerable, it's going towards becoming intolerable, and then there's a false or relapse zone or fall zone when we actually succumb to something wrong. So in that time, our triggers are those things which take us from the safe zone to the temptation zone, to the danger zone, and from there to the relapse zone. So if we find out what our triggers are, then we can create protection for ourselves. We don't have to expose ourselves to those triggers indiscriminately. And conversely, so there's a force that takes us away from here to there. So we try to minimize exposure to that and try to create blockers. So if there are sense objects which allure us, we try to create some obstacles between us, like a net filter on our phone if somebody is troubled by browsing wrong sites. Then there is also uddipan, the stimuli that take us from here to there. So they take us from wherever we are towards the safe zone, and they take us deep into the safe zone of absorption in Krishna. So we can find out what are our spiritual stimuli, we could say. And we can keep those readily accessible for us. And in the visaya-sangara, we should not make the success in the battle against sense gratification the sole barometer of our spiritual advancement. Our spiritual advancement depends on overall how we are practicing bhakti, and no matter how we are faring in our battle against the sense objects, we focus on practicing bhakti. And gradually, so the important thing is the spikes when they come, they may be intolerable. But we don't have to be dwelling on the spikes after or before them. At that time, we can be practicing bhakti. So the mind sometimes first makes us do wrong and then chastises us for doing wrong. So we don't have to fall for that trick of the mind. During the remaining time, we can be Krishna conscious. Then we discuss niyamakshama. We make resolutions, but we are unable to stick to them. And when this happens, we shouldn't think that I don't have determination, but rather we have to find out our way to access our determination. Sometimes having short resolutions for short periods, that may help. Or we can have an accountability partner with whom we can be able to stick to resolutions better. And we should know that even if we can't stick to resolutions, that again is not a failure in bhakti. Because if we succeed in the resolution and become proud, then we are going away from Krishna. Our strength is becoming our weakness. And if we fail in the resolution but we become more dependent on Krishna, then our weakness is becoming our strength. And then lastly we discussed about tarangini. Bhakti gives us fringe benefits, but these fringe benefits they can distract us from bhakti if we focus only on them or we practice bhakti only for them. So we can situate ourselves in the zone where the things that give us pleasure and things that are in the realm of bhakti also. But if our service requires us, then we need to do the things which we may not like to do also. And if the temptation comes that we can do things just because I like them and there's no connection with bhakti, then we have to resist that temptation. And our outer preaching should be the result of our inner reaching of Krishna, not a substitute for inner reaching of Krishna. And lastly, whatever be the anarthas we are facing, whatever be our condition in fighting with the anarthas, we may fall down, but we don't have to fall away. Just keep practicing bhakti. And in due course of time, the process of bhakti will work and we will march onwards towards Krishna. So thank you very much. Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Thai Gaur Premanande.